flag each other down and send them over here if you see someone coming in later and you know they're a DemClub member. They will be endorsing after this form. So all 18 candidates were invited to complete a questionnaire that we put together. And all of those who responded are included in the handout. There's several handouts here at the table on your way out. Also, you can get an electronic copy. Maybe just leave a note with Becky, who's at the table. If you really want it just to be emailed to you, we can accommodate an electronic copy as well. To make tonight more meaningful and a digestible experience, we narrowed the candidates to the 9 that you see before you tonight. So thank you for engaging in this process, and thank you all for coming. It is going to be an interesting experience. Some of you have childcare happening in another room, and that might mean there will be some ebb and flow, but you're all here to listen to you guys. So I'm going to move forward as quickly as I can on our process. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. After that, I'm going to start inviting 3 candidates at a time to dive deeper into some specific questions. They'll each have 2 minutes to respond, and they'll be called to answer 2 of the 6 questions. I'll also be interspersing some quick yes, no's, and just short answer questions throughout the night. At any point, the candidates may choose to weigh in. If I didn't call them up, for instance, on a topic they want to weigh in, they will have 1 minute to come up to this chair and weigh in. They get to do that once. The other thing they can do once this evening is challenge one of the other candidates directly. And if anybody wants to challenge, they hold up their challenge. Oh, nice, Monica's. So, I want to challenge. Which means you would step to here, use the microphone. You'd have 30 seconds to formulate a question for the other candidate, and they will have 1 minute to respond. So that is our process this evening. For your part, you very lovely audience, you probably saw the note cards that are in the seats. If you are thinking and formulating a question, you're not sure if I'm going to ask it, get it down on paper, send it to the aisle. I will be flagging. Sarah over here is going to run down the middle of the aisle and collect them after about the 4th question of the debate, so that she'll be filtering them up and we can get some of the more questions here tonight. But that will only happen through the index cards. Okay, so write them on down, Sarah, we can get them. All right. Are we ready? At 8:20, each candidate's going to have 1 minute to make any closing remarks. And then we have to go home and get the children to bed. So, if candidates could now take a moment to practice with their paddles. Do you understand the evening's format? Can everybody see that? Okay, I don't have to make you stand then. Okay, just make sure you can, really wave them around. Keep in mind, keep in mind the answer you can see is the opposite of the one you wanted to tell me. All right. So now I'm going to have you introduce yourselves down the line. Alita, do you want to start us off over here? Grab the microphone on the table and just keep it 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And Erin here is our timer. I'll ding you with a bell if you need.
We're live. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alita Fisher. I'm the parent of 3 current SFUSD students and 1 recent graduate from Mission High School. My children have attended 7 SFUSD schools in our 13 years in the district, and I'm running for Board of Ed. So I know most of you who are parents have had those conference meetings where you've sat around the table where your knees are taller than the table and the chair brings you down, so you're afraid you're not going to get up. I remember my 3rd kid, who now has an IEP, struggled immensely his first semester of school. And we sat down in our first conference meeting at his new school where he'd been placed to get the right support and services. And the administrator at the table turned and looked at us when I asked for a particular support and said, "I'm sorry, we just don't have the resources here to do that for your kid." So that was the moment that I went from active parent, involved in PTA and SSC and everything, to parent activist. I chair the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. I sit on the ALCAP Task force, and I spend a whole lot of time in front of the district in meetings, at board meetings, at committee meetings, wagging my finger at district officials, telling them what I think they should do. And I'm ready to move to the other side of the table, helping to craft policies now and enforce our existing really good policies, and making sure that all of our students feel safe, supported, welcome, and included at their schools, that they've got everything they need to learn, no matter where they are on the learning spectrum, that every child learns to read, and that we do all this in an accountable and transparent way. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Collins. I'm running for school board, obviously. I guess I'll just talk about the reason that I became an educator in the first place. I used to be a teacher at Galileo. 20 years ago, I became an educator because of my dad. My dad was one of the first in his family to go to college, and beyond that, he became one of the first African Americans to go to UCLA and become a professor. And that was very notable because of the fact that his parents weren't allowed to go to high school in St. Louis. That's where my family's from. If you were black, you basically had to walk 9 miles to go to the black high school, and so they just didn't go. And so when they had kids, they moved up north. They moved to Evanston, just outside of the neighborhood where there was a district where they might have gone. They moved just across the line into a zip code where my dad was one of the first African Americans at his school. And because of that, he credits that school for helping him to know what he needed to do in order to get into college, because his parents couldn't really help him with that. Since I've been an educator, I've focused on equity and making sure that all students have access to college or career, but I've also become a parent and been even more active in organizing families across the district, because I've seen that sometimes when you're in the system, you're not always able to make the changes, and sometimes it's families that are able to do that as well. I'm focused on safe schools, communication with families, and making sure that all students have the support and the challenge to make sure they're where they want to go. I'm one of only 2 candidates that has gotten the endorsement of the Teachers Union, as well as the San Francisco Democratic Party, and I'm one of the most highly endorsed candidates because I've been so active, and I can attest Alita's been there with me, advocating for families and pushing our district to make good on its promises. There are some great programs, but we also need to make sure that they're honoring their promise. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready. On you or you on me? You must be on me. So, Talofa Aloha Malo Lele. My name is Faluma Molina. I am a school social worker and a parent. I am the first Pacific Islander to ever run for school board in the history of San Francisco. And as many of you know, Pacific Islanders in this city have been completely marginalized, right? And so, but this campaign is not only about Pacific Islanders. It's about an issue that has plagued a lot of our students, and that's the opportunity gap, right? And I've been doing this work my whole entire career. And so when we talk about the opportunity gap, we're talking about 3 groups: Latinx, Pacific Islanders, and African Americans. They have the highest dropout rates, the highest truancy rate, the highest absentee rates in the city every single year. Now, there are 3 things that I know that work when it comes to closing this achievement gap with this population. The first is wellness, right? We have to really address this mental health issue. The second is we all have to work together. There's a community schools model that we have to increase upon. And the third is we have to do right by our educators and our staff. Right? I'm a parent. I know how hard it is to take care of my own kids, let alone show up to school and be accountable to taking care of all those kids in the classroom. Now, I've been doing this work for 14 years. For the first 6 years, I built a nonprofit for young women. We put young women into colleges I couldn't even get into. Harvard, UCLA, but back in San Francisco working. From there, I got asked to build the first truancy school in the Bay View, which still exists today, called the Safety Care Center. That school has graduated over 1,000 kids since its inception. At that moment, I got asked to help build the first community schools at Burton High School. When we got there, the school was getting ready to close down because they didn't have enough kids, right? In 4 years, we decreased the dropout rate by 50%. We increased the attendance by 400. Right now, my campaign is super strong. I'm the only candidate that has been endorsed by the mayor, the Democratic Party, who else? The Teachers Union, and the Buildings and Trade. I would love to lead today with your support as well. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm John Tresvenia. I'm very pleased to be here. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and really being back here in Potrero Hill. Is one of our oldest neighborhoods. I'm a San Francisco native. Went to Commodore Sloat, after Lowell High School. I'm currently the president of the Lowell High School Alumni Association. I have a little bit of familiarity with Potrero Hill because my mom was the first vice principal of Potrero Hill Middle School, junior high back then, back in 1971. And it is so great to be one of San Francisco's oldest neighborhoods. You represent our heritage, but also by being here and entrusting your children to our public schools, you represent our future. And we have to do a much better job for our children today. We have to do a better job because it is essential for the future of our city. Right now, our school board is not doing the job that it should. Just in today's paper, you see that the school board decided to pay out teacher salaries before the money comes in. The money's not coming in until December, they're already paying it out. Now, I've had experience. I've had experience in the classroom as a teacher. I've had experience running the dean of USF Law School for the last 5 years. When we, in our budgets, we figure out, we make decisions contingent on the money being there. Another decision that the school district made that's in error, and you need some experience to really have, to make the wise decisions. Got rid of 8th grade algebra. It's a decision that does not make sense for our future, does not make sense in the technological area. To put a ceiling on academic excellence is the wrong thing to do. Third and finally, I would say we need a Latino education initiative. We have one, a strong one for African American students, but we need one for the 27% of our kids who are Latino, who we must close the achievement gap. There are many things wrong with the way our school district is currently run. We need new members on the school board. I want to provide my history of San Francisco and the services and the dedication I've given to the school board. Thank you.
My name is Lex Life. I almost always bring notes. So I'm a third generation educator. I'm a product of public schools, and I'm also a public school mom with 2 young boys. And I have founded a community youth center, spent 11 years teaching and running after school programs. But what makes me stand out in this field particularly is what I can offer to all students when it comes to my proven track record improving communication, operations, and facilities. Specifically, my professional background managing large budgets responsibly at the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, my hands-on experience with capital projects and facilities, and my proven track record building enrollment. At City Hall, I lead the nonprofit sustainability initiative. This week, thanks to connecting the dots between policy and financial resources, we celebrated the opening of 2 facilities to help homeless families and youth, including At the Crossroads and Compass Family Services. As the executive director of SOMARTS at the South of Market Cultural Center, I supported a staff of 33 and negotiated labor contracts. I painted walls, I caught rats, and I also tripled the budget. We also implemented one of the first all-gender restrooms, which was an initiative led by our queer and transgender employees, and I learned a lot from that experience. Equity is important to me, which is why I co-founded Arts for a Better Bay Area and secured an historic $1 million annual increase to the Cultural Equity Endowment at the Arts Commission. And my education track record is deeply rooted in partnerships. SOMART's partnership with the U.S. Department of State and the Islamic Cultural Center focused on Muslim youth and citizenship. As your commissioner, I'll be a leader who listens, who responds directly and honestly, and who's really excited about implementing not only my own ideas, but the ideas of whoever in this group and who's currently on the board, seeing those into action. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lee Meow Lovett, and I remember those rats at Thurgood Marshall. They outran me, so I never caught them. So I have 3 unique lenses in this race. One is on social emotional learning. I am trained as a marriage, family, child counselor. My work has been in academic counseling for the last 14 out of 20 years in public education. What does that mean? Well, the first day my son, who's now in 5th grade, brought home tons of homework. He cried. and he had done quite well in 4th grade. By the 2nd day, he had figured out how to do pages and pages, and he realized he did a whole column wrong. So we started over again. Social emotional learning is so critical to all our children, whether they're high performing, low performing, whatever socioeconomic groups. It means that we support students who feel bullied. It means we support students who don't feel like they belong. It means we support students when they go through those difficult transitions as early teens and older teens, and certainly through all the changes of childhood that we so want to hold on to for as long as we can. That's really critical. Number 2, I bring my perspective as an immigrant. When I grew up in Chinatown, we didn't have health insurance. My father carried me to Chinatown Hospital. What does it mean that we now have $50 million going to expanding the Beacon Centers? All the middle schools will have it. These can be true, vital community centers that will support both youth, elders, and also working parents so that they have resources, especially for those who feel marginalized or those who need opportunities in the city. And finally, I really have a strong CTE background. What is that? Career technical education. San Francisco Unified has the academies. They train them in digital media design, in biotechnology, in green technology, and a lot of the computer networking skills that are as critical to computer science. And then from the City College side, we brought in the seniors to actually take our classes. I sat down with every one of the seniors from the academy and also International High School. I know what their hopes and dreams are. I'm here to do the work. So I support a Democratic Party, Labor Council, and yes, I thank you.
Hello, thank you for coming tonight and spending your time to be an informed voter. I really appreciate that. My name is Michelle Parker. I have been an active and passionate advocate for our public schools for more than a decade, since my oldest started 13 years ago, who just graduated, just like Alita's son, this June. And I have been spending the better part of 2 decades involved in education. I come with a lot of experience related to education policy, education finance, and an understanding of how the district works. I was president of the district PTA, which is the body that you probably know supports all of the PTAs around the city. So I've worked with thousands of parents and heard from them about what they need to be supported of, help them develop leadership skills, advocacy skills, and help them work through those issues and those challenges we all face at our schools. I was the first chair of the oversight committee for the last parcel tax we passed 10 years ago to make sure that we were spending voter money in the way that was intended, and that we were supporting our educators and therefore supporting our kids. I've also served in a lot of committees at the state level, teaching parents all across the state how to be involved in their LCAP to make sure that their districts are spending resources that would really impact students. I've also served as the president of the board of directors for an arts education nonprofit, where we have been leading the charge with racial justice work. We work in the juvenile hall, we work with new immigrant students, and we're going to be moving into the Geneva Powerhouse soon to impact the Excelsior community. My 3 priorities in this race are: 1, expand early education. I want to see universal preschool, 2 years for every kid who's coming into our schools to help level the playing field and get them prepared to be successful. Expand career technical education so that all of our students can see themselves in the future, have access to internships, apprenticeships, exploring careers. And then 3rd, I want to make sure that we can support our educators to live in the city so that they can stay here, that we can reduce the churn that happens in a lot of our most underserved schools. I have great support in this campaign, most importantly from parents and teachers, but also from other groups around the city, like the Alice Potrero Democratic Club and the Labor Building Trades Council and others. Thank you.
My name is Monica Chinchilla, and I feel like I've been waiting for this, forum for about a year. I'm a Potrero resident. I've had the honor of living here for the last 8 years, and I've raised my daughter for the last 4 years. She's currently in preschool. I'm running for Board of Education because our schools impact generations. And I know this because as the first one in my family to graduate and go to college, I know how much of a difference that's made not only in my life, but in my daughter's life, and the opportunities it's afforded her. And I want to make sure that opportunity is available for every single child in San Francisco. My highest priority is to make sure more of our Black and brown youth are going to college and to prison, and how to make sure that every child is getting supports they need to succeed. My platform is 3 things. First, it's teacher support, making sure that our teachers have the supports inside their classroom, as well as a livable wage so they can live and work here in San Francisco. Second, it's a strong start, making sure every child from TK through 3rd grade education is getting the supports they need in literacy, in early identification of learning disabilities, as well as reclassification of our English language learners so that they can have positive experiences in our schools and create lifelong learners. And the third is community schools, which is those wraparound support services for our families on site, so that families are dealing with homelessness, with violence, with food scarcity are able to have their needs met within our schools. You know, for me in this race, I represent a lot of things. I represent, you know, many young parents who live in San Francisco who believe in public education, but who feel worried about our school system. And how do we make sure as a district that we are building confidence and we are meeting the needs of our families so that all families can be sure that their child will receive a quality education in our schools. And second, as a Latina, I would be the first in 20 years elected in this position. And I've been working with the community for a long time. And I'm close with the community and want to make sure that their needs are heard. I've had experience working on statewide initiatives, you know, working with a coalition, getting universal preschool within our, oh my gosh, stop. All right, we'll talk about that later in the one-minute closing.
Hello, my name is Phil Kim. My time in education actually began in the classroom when I first taught 7th grade life science in the East Bay in San Lorenzo, and more recently, 8th grade life science in West Oakland. I now have the great privilege of overseeing curriculum instruction, teaching and learning for a network of 15 schools here in the Bay Area, managing other regions in LA, San Diego, Atlanta, and DC, while also overseeing policy for about 90,000 students across the country. I have the great privilege of just obsessing about the quality of teaching in our classrooms. And I've worked with both chief academic officers, superintendents, coaches, and teachers, and I'm in classrooms 3-4 days a week, just working with our teachers and improving the quality of instruction that happens in the classroom. On a more personal note, I was born in Detroit. I grew up in the suburbs. My parents are immigrants from South Korea who had a failing business, and I lived through all of that. And both having parents right now, as a mother who is single, raising my brother who just went off to college these past couple weeks, who now lives in government subsidized housing, who makes under the poverty line. Unfortunately, there are a lot of families in our district who also share those same experiences. And in my opinion, as a proud gay educator of color, while representation isn't the reason why I'm running, I'm very well aware that visibility and representation matter in our district. It matters in our city. It helps to inform better policies, more inclusive practices, and just better legislation. And I'm proud to be running for our school district here in San Francisco. In my opinion, the thing that is going to close the gap, the thing that is going to move the needle for the outcomes for our kids, is improving the quality of instruction in our schools. We know that that works, both remediation, intervention, differentiation in our schools. And I am the only candidate who's running who's done that at the state, regional, national levels. I've talked at South by Southwest EDU on data interoperability when it comes to K-12 education. I've given professional development and training for thousands of teachers across the country, and I'm proud to continue that work here in San Francisco as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to dive in deep. For our first question, I'd like to call Paula, John, and Monica. Come on up. Sarah's going to put a nameplate in front of you. Go ahead and check your microphones. So in response to our questionnaire, many candidates use the term community schools in reference to wraparound support services for children and families. Others use the term neighborhood schools in reference to our enrollment process. I don't think these terms are always clear to somebody who's not in San Francisco. So I ask the three of you to please use your 2 minutes to tell us more about your vision for community or neighborhood schools and how you would partner, resource, innovate, and communicate to achieve that vision.
Thank you. So I've visited over 25 schools in the last year, and I've heard the same thing over and over, is that many of our kids are not in a place to learn when they enter the classroom. They're dealing with, with life. In San Francisco, we have a lot of issues that our families are dealing with. And what community schools is, it basically maximizes the real estate of our schools within our community. So not only are schools just for instruction, but they become the hub, a hub of resources for families, so that we can take care of families, take care of the child, so that families are getting help with domestic violence, with homelessness, with immigration support, so that we're taking care of the needs of the child and is taking a more holistic approach on education. And, you know, especially within San Francisco, we're a very wealthy city. We have Department of Public Health, we have the Department of Children, Youth, and Family. What community schools would be is a way to better integrate our services so that instead of these departments operating in silos, they're operating in conjunction and we're maximizing the impact on our families. And so all of this supports are to make sure that our kids are ready to learn, that they're not dealing with, did I eat, or did I have a safe place to stay, did I deal with violence, or did I sleep in a car? No, we're taking care of those needs so that when they enter the classroom, they're ready to learn. And that our teachers aren't tasked with being teachers, social worker, mother, nurse, etc. Like their main role is to teach. And how do we take that weight off of them and put more of the responsibility of the caring of the child on our community? So not only with these different department agencies, but with different, you know, community organizations and churches that will be working together to take care of our children.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you. In addition to being an educator, I've also been a public servant. I was President Obama's Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity. And there is where we get into as Monica described, the wraparound service, the community schools, understanding that both education is the key to freedom, but also the neighborhood where you live in is oftentimes, for better or for worse, an indicator of how well you will succeed in life. And that is something that when there are barriers, the schools must be in the lead in order to remove those barriers. It requires cooperation. It requires working together with the city and the school district, the private sector, to be able to bring in all the resources to the table. So in terms of community schools, we have community schools like Buena Vista, Horace Mann, where we have services for homeless children and being an asset for the community. So the community schools are critically important to our future success. The neighborhood schools is a different concept, not contradictory, but a different concept. And there is where our school district has failed, because we have one of those complicated enrollment processes in the country. Boston does a better job, Seattle does a better job, Atlanta does a better job. The enrollment process is both because of the process. Those schools just do things online. But second is to try to get you into a quality neighborhood school. So we have to be serious about breaking down barriers to success. It's not just in the schools. The schools are a symptom of a larger issue of criminal justice problems, of housing segregation. So I think together, the city and the school district must work together to address those larger problems. And also, in the meantime, working to make sure that every neighborhood has a quality school for its children and families to attend. Thank you.
Olga, thank you.
So community schools. So like I mentioned before, I was actually asked to be a part of the team to build the first community schools at a high school in San Francisco, at Berkeley High School. And so, you know, the concept of community schools kind of goes way back, right? But pretty much what it is it brings additional resources into the school. So when we went up to Berkeley High School, we literally brought $1 million into Berkeley High School. It was a partnership between the YMCA, Department of Public Health. We also had a quiet time program that taught a school-wide meditation for the students and the kids. But it really was a collaborative vision. We also opened the school. It's not your traditional, 8 to 3 o'clock school. We had the school open up on weekends. We had the school open up in the evenings. We had adult classes. We had employment programs. We had Saturday stuff. We had Tai Chi. We had everything. And then we also took the school into the community, right? So it's not only about the community being accountable to the school, it's also about the school being accountable to the community, right? So we allow teachers, principals, and the leadership to be a part of the parade. Our Union Baby, which still exists today, it's called the Unity Parade, right? And like I told you that before, we literally increased the attendance by 404 years. We decreased the dropout rate by 50%. And when I was there was a nationwide issue around student athletes, raping young women in high school. Now it was the beacon, the community schools, which I led the effort at, which we created the PREFund, which launched the campaign for 2 years. It still actually exists today. That reached over 3,000 young men, teaching them about consent and male toxicity and male privilege in this city today. Right? The program still exists. And so when I talk about community schools, I'm talking about three entities. I'm talking about the school district, the private sector, and the city government, and our community, right? Like our folks here, this is community to me. These are the people that also matter in that trifecta of intent.
Thank you so much. All right, now if you want to go back and take your seats, I'm going to introduce my first yes or no question.
We didn't get a challenge.
Find your paddle. And just for those of you who maybe were thinking you might weigh in, I'm going to give you a chance now. Yes or no? Do you support the expansion or creation of wellness centers and community schools as a priority within the budget?
Sorry.
All right, everybody going to weigh in with the challenge? Okay. Thank you. Second yes or no question. Do you support prioritizing neighborhood schools in the school assignment process? You all have to answer. I know you're thinking hard. Oh, look at that sideways. Go. Oh, you want to weigh in, Michelle. Step to the forward. Here we go. Michelle has 1 minute to weigh in. That was the one that was
Okay. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think that, how long do I have for this?
1 minute.
1 minute. All right. So I think that we have some complications with our student assignment system. We all know it's a super complicated thing to participate in, and it's a lot of reason. It's one reason why a lot of people will leave our district. And I think we can't move solely to a neighborhood assignment system. We just can't, because we don't actually have schools and kindergarten seats where all of our families live, which are primarily in the south and east parts of our city. So we can't move that direction fully. And we also have lots of schools. If you look at the superintendent's pitch initiative, you see we have lots of schools who have a big achievement gap. So we can't really move fully that way. But I also think that families want to choose a school that is close to them if it's a good school, and that's their priority. So I think we should move towards neighborhood schools. I don't think we go there right away, but I think we move towards talking with our communities, finding out what the barriers are to choosing their schools and working with them to improve those schools. And then talk about offering initial assignment with a cluster of schools that starts to offer some more predictability towards moving towards neighborhood schools, but not yet, because there's stuff to do in the middle.
Thank you. Woo. All right, we got to help go ahead. Oh, we got another way in. Come on, Lex. Again, you only get to weigh in once, so this is clearly a hotbed issue.
I'm slow on the permit. I'm hoping I can weigh in on community schools. Can I weigh in on
You can only
community
weigh in
schools?
on one, so community schools?
Yeah,
Go for
community
it.
schools. So when the question came saying, would you put community schools in the budget, I said no, and I wanted to have a chance to explain myself. I don't support increasing the budget for community schools in the SFUSD budget, because so much of the funding for those types of services is available through the city, through the Department of Public Health, through the Department of Children, Youth, and their families, and through connecting the dots with getting permanent or affordable space for these organizations who are supporting the schools through community benefits and private development. I very much support increasing resources for those schools and would work to measure the accountability, not just like a correlation of, oh, there's fewer high-need students in our schools, so everyone's performing better, but really the causation so that we can secure those resources long-term. Thank you.
I'm not going to make you stick up your paddles. I thought that was very nice of you. All right. We're going to move on. I'd like to call Alida, Lee, Miao, and Michelle. All right. Among your stated priorities and goals, as a member of the Board of Education, you all highlighted scopes within SFUSD that you would like to expand or improve, including special education, early childhood education, services and support for our immigrant and homeless families. I'd like to give each of you 2 minutes to explain further to our audience why this is a priority for you and what specific plans, I'm going to emphasize this for all the candidates, specific plans you have to achieve it. Go ahead, start, Michelle. Sure.
Okay, so I'm one who talked about expanding universal preschool. So we have We have agreed in concept as a city that universal preschool is important to us when we passed, when we started funding preschool for all as part of the Public Education Enrichment Fund, which was passed back in 2004. There's a section of that that goes to early education, and we have really just a few $1 million that are going towards that right now. But what we have seen by doing that is that there's been an increase in participation by our African American and Latino students, and that increased participation is critical, and we've seen actual good outcomes coming from that. And so I want to see us expand this so that we're giving every student in the city an opportunity to have 2 years of high quality early education, because we know that that goes a long way towards closing achievement gaps, which we all know is critical. It's also a really important thing for us to help mitigate the cost of living in the city for families with young children. And there are different ways we can go about doing that. We may have to move towards a subsidized model. Right now, it is a subsidized model of preschool for all. It's not fully funded. But I have numbers about what it looks like if we get a subsidized amount versus fully funding it, so that families can do this. And so some of the specific steps, this is not just a district issue. This is something we have to work with the city on. And our mayor actually prioritizes universal preschool as well, so that's something I would like to work with her on. And other organizations around the city. I think that SFUSD is going to need to expand its preschool spots. So many people don't even know we offer preschool in that district. More of those spots, and then we need to work to have more accredited preschools across the city, and work together to find additional funding. And it may mean that for the voters, but we also just passed PREFund, and there's some in June, and some of that money, which still there's trailer legislation should still be happening for that. But we can use some of that hopefully to help increase early education salaries and spots.
Thank you. Emilia?
So I've worked with our early childhood education department at City College for trainings many of our preschool teachers. So ditto. As for special education, this is really critical because I have been in the classrooms as a volunteer and also a student teacher at UPG and Uni and also Mission High. When you see 6 or 7 kids with IEPs and 504s in one classroom with 35 students total, parents might not always be able to support each of these students, and if there's one teacher, then something's got to change. The parents are not making a living wage with working 6 hours or 4 hours. Within Title 20, we need to find a way to increase the responsibilities of these parent educators so that they relieve the burden that the learning specialists or others have coordinated this team for the special ed students, and that they are, since they're on the front lines, they're the ones who could also be working more in the after hours to provide this kind of support. So this is a win-win, both for the whole class of our educators as well as for special ed students who need that support. And the rest of the students who also need full attention of the educators in the classroom. And as for the third category, it will address in terms of having a holistic vision around how we support homeless and housing secure students. Can we have the Beacon Centers, for example, organized as a place where we have services to provide for housing secure students in one neighborhood or region? And then can we actually, even looking to the future, build housing specifically for these homeless families in a neighborhood? And so these become hubs which serve the area schools. I would love to move forward that vision and have a large vision.
Thank you. Alita?
Okay, special education is kind of my wheelhouse. So I'll focus here, but first I'm going to give a shameless plug since I only have 2 minutes. 1 minute. I'm sorry.
There you go, Joe.
Okay. The CAC actually presents to the Board of Education next Tuesday, the 25th. You want to hear the full plan? Very detailed full plan. Come on out. Join us at the board meeting. But I think with special education in particular, it's important to recognize that 75% of our students with IEPs are served in general ed. So when we talk about inclusion and we talk about supporting our students with IEPs, we're talking about supporting everyone throughout our entire district. Above and beyond, first just more parents. And we've changed the way our special education information database reports paras over the past couple years, and so we've actually, just because we're not collecting data right, we've lost a bunch of paras, so we're working on that and providing information from the state to fix that. I'm a total geek. I can go into much more detail, but I don't have time. But also, when you think about not having appropriate parent support in the classroom, we're in a teacher crisis. We lost, I think, close to 500 teachers last year. And actually, not all of that was through retirements. Not all of it was for teachers moving out of the city. A lot of it was teachers being frustrated with not having the support in the classroom. So above and beyond training for everyone, you know, we need more warm bodies. And I mean, I don't mean to call a parent just a warm body. Holy hell, that sounded disrespectful, sorry. But we need trained adults to support our students and include them. And that philosophy, you can take special education student out of that and you can plug in any other marginalized population and put that same student's name, that same population in there, and the same correlation that's true in our district. Wish I had more of that. Come next Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, prepare your paddles. Much has been reported about the difference between nonprofit and for-profit charter schools. Are there charter schools that you believe expand and improve opportunities for the students in San Francisco? Yes or no? Ooh! Come on up, Alita.
All right, so again, I'll put on my special education hat. You know, the district has historically underserved certain populations of students. And I begrudge no parent for choosing something better than what they experienced for themselves, right? We have charter schools such as Gateway here in San Francisco, such as Creative Arts. Gateway in particular was designed specifically to support students with learning differences. And I have a whole lot of respect for a lot of our charter schools. Those who choose to be part of our governance structure, who choose to work within SFUSD's special education local plan area, who report directly to SFUSD's Board of Ed, and have local opportunities for parent engagement at the board level. Unfortunately, not all charters do, and as a parent of a student with special ed, going to my local CAC meetings has really helped me learn how to support my kid, and I wish that for all parents.
Thank you. All right, as a follow-up, do you support a moratorium on new charters? Yes or no? Thank you. All right, I'd like to call John, Lee Miao, and Phil. All right, are you ready? Each of you listed the achievement or opportunity gap as one of your top priorities, if elected. Please name a school or program that is closing the gap and what SFUSD could do to emulate their success. Phil, take it away.
Start when I I think there are some schools in SFUSD who have put in a considerable amount of work around this. I think Everett Middle School is one. And the reason I use Everett is because I think that they were in an interesting position where they were given considerable amounts of flexibility from the district several years ago in exchange for well, largely those races top grants that they received. But in exchange, they got a considerable amount of flexibility in both their ability to staff, their ability to hold certain programs, to implement certain programs. I've had several of my own friends, close personal friends and colleagues of mine who have worked there and have seen that school transform year over year generally. We also know that in SFUSD, our achievement gap remains stagnant. We have not closed the gap, which is why I think it's difficult to try to come up with a solution for a school that would be doing that well. You know, the reality is, we can talk on and on about what actually closes the gap, and in our K-12 schools, research shows that the two primary levers in closing that gap are, one, the quality of the curriculum that's used in the classroom, and 2, the ability for a teacher, a highly qualified, well-trained teacher, to implement on that curriculum, right? And all the things that go into that teacher, right? The support, the coaching that's necessary to support them. All of this is what closes the gap, right? And we need to double down on that. Arguably, the thing that we are supposed to do the best job in, teaching, is talked about the least in our boardroom. And in my opinion, that's largely because we have, in the past 18 years or so, the only person who taught before was Mark Sanchez. And we need people on our board who know what good quality teaching looks like. Because that is what we know closes the gap in terms of Black and brown achievement and white Asian students, right? And I will stop there.
So I was in the classroom, in the biology classroom, 2 or 3 days a week at Mission High. And inside the classroom, what I saw was a new innovative approach to teaching the next generation science standards. I think that still has a lot of room for being developed, but it engages students with hands-on models. It has students working in teams. It creates, new learning environments and ways of thinking about things. Bringing graph into learning about genetics. So that's very powerful. When this sixth period class was out of control, the teacher brought in somebody who's hired to do meditation. And so that's also part of the achievement gap, when you can focus and you can actually learn. We had paras at the school who wanted to become teachers, and so there are pathways where the paras are interested in taking that next step, and we need to kind of bridge that divide too between who's a support person and who's the teacher on record. There were some serious issues in terms of extortion and where there was proper management around the students who were the victims of things going on in the school, and that was handled. That I could just go on and on. There was a health center. That is a model for what we should have at all of the high schools. And will that completely close the achievement gap? Not right away, because we have so much suffering that has gone on in our historically marginalized communities. So it is a step, because if they can get from here for getting some of their basic needs met, then the next step for learning.
Great, thank you.
John.
This one works?
Yep.
Great. I support the African American Achievement and Learning Initiative. It's been around since 2013. As a management tool, it's critically important for the superintendent to be able to have a defined program with parent involvement, to be able to turn to staff at every board meeting and say, what progress have we made? So I support that program. I think we also need a Latino education initiative. I was president of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Club. I've seen school districts around the country that neglect Latino students. Without a Latino education initiative, we are neglecting the 27% of our school districts who are Latino students. There are gaps. There are gaps in schools where there's racial concentration. There are also gaps in the schools where there are not. And the gaps are persistent, school after school after school. Without the ability of having a school board member who has had management experience in education, to be able to turn to the superintendent, to turn to staff and say, what have we done in the last month? Have we met our goals? Are we on track? And what do we need as a district in order to achieve it? That's what's going to make a difference. Second is, I would move both those initiatives and focus on pre-K to grade 5. The OLLI initiative now is focused on high school males. That's important. We must continue that. We can't abandon any student. But pre-K to 5 is a critically important time for parenting skills, for study skills, and study habits. So I think with the great library system we have in San Francisco, voted the #1 urban library system in the country, it's within our means to have every parent be able to have read to their child or read to their child 1,000 books before starting kindergarten. And the old adage from the League of United Latin American Citizens, 400 English words in every kindergartner's vocabulary as they start first grade. Those will be the things that start students off on the right foot, and that's what I would support, and that's what I want to see: a Latino education initiative and expanding the African American initiative as well.
Thank you, John. All right, I've got 2 quick questions. Elementary seat. Oh, we are all the way in. All right, let's quickly, I want to let the audience know, though, if you've got some burning questions, I would really like you to write them on your note cards, because after the next couple of popcorn and kind of yes, no questions. I'm going to have Sarah come through the aisle. So I want you to write down your questions and pass it to the aisle while they're weighing in. Okay.
So just really quickly with this, first, part of my biggest thing is not just, Latinos, African Americans, but APIs. And so I'm expanding it to an Office of Equity similar to Oakland so that we're inclusive of all these groups because we suffer from the same things. We need to be working with each other and for each other instead of against each other. It's not either or. Second, especially for achievement gap, there needs to be a lot of emphasis on rebuilding the trust in families. Because especially in the baby, especially in the mission, there's so many families who are even hesitant to engage with our schools because they've been let down time and time again. And similar to schools like Mission Education Center, who have dedicated space for parents, who have weekly meetings with their principal, so that they're talking about the curriculum, talking about their students' performance and how they can best serve them. We need to rebuild that trust. And so engaging with parents, and especially immigrant communities, is vital because many families don't feel supported and feel like the system is against them. So really parent support. And then, honestly, with achievement gap, it is those social services. I gotta talk faster. I wanna start talking to families.
Okay. Oh, no, was that you? Okay, come on over.
This is why I'm running for school board. So when we talk about the opportunity gap, again, we're talking about Latinos, Latinx, African Americans, and Pacific Islanders. I say that very, very humbly and respectfully because a lot of the things that are happening to our communities today is because of pure neglect. Pure neglect, and when you take neglect and you put it in a mental health term, that's why there's a lot of issues, right? And so there's only one place I know in this city that has closed the achievement gap of anybody, and that's at City College of San Francisco. They closed the achievement gap for Pacific Islanders in 3 years. So it's possible. They didn't do it through academics, they did it through culture. They taught the kids about their culture. They taught them how to be Pacific Islanders. Who are they from? They took them back to the islands. In 3 years, they closed that opportunity gap. We can do the same thing in San Francisco. I actually built the Oceana Sunrise Initiative, which is a sister initiative to the Ali program this year. Okay, so when we talk about that issue, don't forget those 3 groups. Thank you.
Hi, I really want to say thank you, Foga. I really appreciate what you're saying. As a Black parent involved in APAC, my daughters came home last fall and told me that there was a kid in their math class who said Black kids are dumb. And it was when there was a sub there. It's an excellent classroom. My daughter loves the class. Her friends love the class. I'm mixed. My daughter presents like me. She has a friend, Maya, who presents definitively Black in a school that's only 3% Black. And she had to talk herself down and say, I'm not going to get mad. I'm tired of this. And so that's the thing that we've done actually a lot of work on this at some sites. And John Muir is doing work on this very intensely, and they're seeing huge gains in math. Because they're not just talking about structural things, they're not just talking about instruction. Teachers are actually interrogating how they're talking about race in mathematics. And we need to do that, and we're not doing that. And African American Parent Advisory Council has been asking for implicit bias training district-wide. The teachers union is also asking for this, and yet we're not investing in that. And I think we really need to start talking about race in our schools. They'll make people feel safe, and it'll also lead to achievement.
All the way in. Oh, wait. Can you weigh in on it again if you just want to go for it? You have another minute.
Let's be really clear though around what good teaching actually means, right? Good teaching means that our curriculum is culturally responsive. Good teaching means that we have a sustainable workload for our teachers. Good teaching means that our teachers are getting the constant coaching that they need. The reality is in San Francisco, if you're a teacher, you have a day and a half of regional leadership development training before the school year starts. I don't know of any organization that gives a day and a half of onboarding before they get you into your job. We also require, 1 to 2 required feedback cycles a year. I don't know of any employee that meets with their manager 1 to 2 times a year for formal feedback. We have significant work to do in providing our teachers with the right systems-wide level support that they need to grow. And we know that proper coaching is what moves teachers. Teachers need the feedback. Someone sitting in the back of the classroom, giving them observational feedback, in-the-moment feedback, planning this out alongside them. And all of this happens with dedicated school site coaches who are working with them instructionally on all the things that go into it.
Oh, oh, Ellie's got a challenge. Come on. You have 30 seconds to formulate a question to one of the candidates.
So Phil, I'd like to know what classrooms you've taught in San Francisco Unified School District, because those numbers are different from my experience. So I'd like to know what specific classrooms you've taught in and how you are getting that information.
He has 1 minute to answer.
Sure. So I have not taught in San Francisco Unified. I have taught at two, though, Title I schools, who have had over 80% African American Latino students. And we have seen our gaps close. Now, again, this goes back into a question of how do we close that? Right? This is all, I'm going to just rattle off a bunch of education language, but adequate data-driven instruction, that means looking at the outcomes of our students, understanding where they are and what they need in the moment, is providing adequate levels of intervention early on so they can get the adequate support that they need, either with the use of technology and blended learning programs or direct small group instruction. It means after school reading opportunities, because we know that 3rd grade reading and 8th grade math are two critical moments in student outcomes. It means that we are properly providing our school leaders with the support that they need to build safe and inclusive school environments. It means that we are providing our assistant principals with adequate training tools, like Relay's Graduate School of Education, like all of the culture, science, and pedagogy work that's come out of UC Berkeley, to make sure that they are aware of the skills that are necessary.
Thank you. Ooh, this is getting more exciting than I was expecting. All right, thank you. Go ahead and take a seat. There will be more to chat about. All right, and keep writing those questions if this piques your interest, because I'm going to ask 2 quick questions, and then Sarah will go down the middle. All right, so it's a yes or no. Get your paddle. Would you support efforts to pool PTA fundraising or PTSA fundraising across different sites? Thank you. Now I've got a popcorn. This one, you're going to hate me for this, but I love this question. I'm gonna popcorn who answers in what order too. So tell us. Please name an author, blogger, journalist, or entity within education that you regularly read for inspiration. Give you a minute. Oh, Michelle's ready. No, but you're away with me now. Oh, and I should hand this. You know what? This will be complicated.
I'm a huge fan of Linda Darling Hammond, and I'm regularly on the LPI website, which is the Learning Policy Institute website, where they have regular research about the teacher shortage, about the achievement gap, and all kinds of stuff.
All right, thank you. That was Linda who?
Linda Darling Hammond.
Linda Darling Hammond. Lex?
I believe it's Nicole Hannah Jones. She writes about segregation in schools and racism in education, and was someone who I looked to a lot as we were making our school choice last year.
Thank you. Oh, I see hands up. I'm just going to move on to Alita. Oh, not bad.
Jose Luis Wilson is a writer. He's a math educator in middle school, and he's a dad, and he writes about teaching math in New York City. And he also, I follow Dr. Julian Vasquez-Heilig, who's the NAACP Education Chair for California. He writes about charters, about whole community schools, and just education and opportunity gap related stuff in general.
So I read the Mission High School book. I forget the name, Christina Rizik, something like that. If you haven't read it, it's a great deep dive into individualized education. That's fantastic. I'm currently reading Zaretta Hammond's Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. But as far as regularly follow, Allison Collins has a great blog. I didn't take
You're sweating?
So I'm a therapist and a social worker, so I read a lot of books around, trauma-informed practices. And so one of the dearest ones of my heart is Peter Levine. He wrote The Tiger Within. It's really around somatic work. And recently I've been reading a lot of poems from June Jordan. And so,
Yeah.
So I recommend reading researcher Greg Walton's work on social belonging. I think it's really critical, especially in this age of Trump. And these are studies that have looked at, some of them are actually, they're called randomized controlled studies, and in the high schools, actually having populations who go through these modules, indicating that there are changes in both their grades and also their academic outcomes that are connected with a young person's sense of belonging or not belonging in school.
I read Ed 100, which is a compendium of law, fact, and policy, which is essential for a school board member. This is a different role than being in the classroom. It's a different role. And our school board, unfortunately, has not acted in the best interest of our parents and kids because they have not looked at fact, law, and policy enough.
Monica.
I love to read and I'm a cycle for data, so I read anything I can get my hands on, especially as a parent who will be entering the district. I read everything. And I do a cheat and read Allison Collins' column all the time, as well as I'm really focused on restorative justice and cultural identity for the Latino community. So Instituto Familiar de Raza has a lot of great articles, and so I'm constantly working with them at their mental health perspective.
Someone mentioned Zorda Hammond's Culture Responsive Teaching in the Brain. We just finished that as a case study with our team. It is a phenomenal book just around the neuroscience around learning, how that impacts kind of educators and how we view student achievement, and specifically around closing the achievement gap. She's also local. I attended her Power Pedagogy training in UC Berkeley. It was phenomenal.
Great, thank you. Did everybody take notes? Sarah is going to be heading down that center aisle, so if anybody has handed you a card and it's stopped on your chair, keep sending it into the middle aisle. Thank you. All right, I would like to call Allison Collins, Monica Tequila, and Bill. So this will be interesting after that challenge. Almost everyone highlighted teachers in their priorities for the district, but each of you spoke to support for teachers in different ways. I'd like each of you to spend 2 minutes on your priorities for supporting and training teachers. I'm going to go with the other side. Sorry, just shake it up.
Okay, hi. All right, so I'm the only one here that's actually got kids in the class in schools and was a teacher in the classroom. And I've not only been a teacher, I've worked on a school level coordinating school anti-violence programs, anti-bullying programs, and those kind of overarching wellness programs. And then I worked as a school coach, helping teachers improve instruction, and then I worked in central office as a teacher on special assignment, working with principals and district leaders, understanding data to inform instruction. But I'm very excited about working, when we talk about differentiation, supporting kids at all levels, but it can be very frustrating if it's not supported. And I've had those experiences as a teacher both ways. And as it was mentioned before, it is a reason that a lot of teachers drop out. We just burn out. But when it's done well, it's like a drug. It's so wonderful to be able to serve students at all levels and really realize the dream of public education and serve all students. But it does need support. And specifically, you need teachers to have a real strong understanding of the content, because what you're doing is you're not just, what we were used to in the old days was kind of teaching at a specific level, and then kids at the top moved forward and the kids at the bottom kind of dropped off. What you're doing instead of teaching specific to content is you're really thinking about big ideas and complex instruction. And when you do that, then you can lower the floor and you can raise the ceiling and you can ask questions, and students can be more engaged in choosing where they go with support. So it's more like facilitated learning. That requires a real strong understanding of the content. It also requires support in helping to differentiate that content so that you can take a lesson and you can expand it so kids can go high, or you can provide scaffolding so kids can kind of reach it. And then you also need paras like physical support, wellness, homeless students need, just physical, like food, those types of things. So whole community schools is something that I've been working on supporting, and it's not just Beacon, because that's a great after-school program. We're talking about full school.
You've got a lot to say.
Yes, I'd love to talk more about that.
All right,
I would save my card. I didn't know this was coming. As a teacher, when I lived in San Francisco, nearly 60% of my paycheck went to my housing, my rent each month. It was a mess. But educators and teachers, having been one, honestly no different than most other nonprofits and organizations that they work for, in that they care deeply about three things. One, can I sustain to live here on my salary? Do I like my manager, and do I like my workplace culture, right? And when it comes to salaries, budgets are a testament of our priorities. And in our district, when we have about 27% of our district budget going to salaries, and then actually the state average is about 35%. If you just simply benchmark to the state average, you would see our percentage in terms of salaries go up dramatically. But it also requires advocacy at the state level to ensure that we have reform around Prop 13 and et cetera. Around school culture, right, and workplace culture, the one person responsible for the most part for school culture is the principal. And currently in our district, we don't have a comprehensive development pipeline or plan to support our principals in any capacity. And we need to make sure that we are adequately giving them the time, space, energy, and skills necessary to do their job well. And kind of get rid of the red tape surrounding all of the regulations around school leaders and what they need to do and what they need to accomplish, and just give them an opportunity to do their job well. And lastly, around kind of managerial training, right? Like, this is what my bread and butter. We need to make sure that every single school in San Francisco Unified has dedicated staff members at the school site whose sole job is to obsess about the quality of teaching and supporting their teachers. Sitting in the back of the classroom, supporting them individually, co-planning with them. And quite frankly, we just don't see that across our district, right? Our most well-resourced schools have multiple coaches on staff who are supporting their teachers, and our most struggling schools are having a difficult time making ends meet with time and capacity. And so the time spent on instruction and coaching goes down, and we make sure that we focus on improving our schools around that.
Thank you. Monica.
So first, our teachers are so undervalued within society, and I think it's a crime that in the fifth largest economy in the state that we are lowest performing or have the lowest funding, in terms of our schools, and then in one of the wealthiest cities that our teachers are forced to either commute from different cities or have to drive Uber to even be able to work for our kids. And I know as a parent, it's me as a parent and our teachers who are responsible for instilling the identity, the value, and the worth of our children. So my biggest thing is making sure that A, they get the support inside the classroom, but a livable wage so that they can stay and work in San Francisco. And I'm already working on a bunch of crazy things from statewide to local about how do we get the dollars so that they can stay within our district. Because I've met many teachers who still live in San Francisco but are commuting into Marin or San Mateo or Pleasanton because they can make $20,000 more. So first is, I'm working with some state officials on proposing a oil severance tax on, raising funds for public education here in the state so we can get more funds for our public school. How to work with the legislature so that we're getting a greater investment into our district for high cost of living districts like San Francisco. And then locally, the solutions, a few things proposing is a 1% tax on corporations earning a net profit of $100 million or more to go towards teacher salaries so that they're getting a wage comparable to firefighters and police officers, so that they're not having to suffer. And also as well, working with our local city government. This is not a SFUSD issue, this is a San Francisco issue, and how we work in partnership with San Francisco, who has a very wealthy budget, so that we can get that investment into our schools. Because it behooves us to raise up a generation who can live here, who can work here, who can pay taxes, who care about our schools, who care about our buses and our air. Because right now, so many of our kids who are graduating or who are close to graduating don't even think they can stay in San Francisco. And that's just ridiculous. And so we need to make sure that our teachers can live and work here so that they can invest in our next generation.
Thank you. And I'll let her weigh in and then you can decide who challenge.
So yes to increasing funding across the state for our educators. Prop 13 reform in 2020. Corporations are playing shell games with the properties that they sit on or they sell or they don't sell. And this does not touch homeowners. I am one of those on the west side. This is really about reforming a system that means we are chronically underfunded, well underfunded, compared to a state like New York in terms of per pupil spending. So that is the biggie. And of course, we need to also ensure that our school budgets will provide more money. One thing that I really want to see is support for new teachers. We absolutely need to make sure that when they're going through not just their teacher induction, but all the hoops they have to jump once they have to clear their credentials as a new teacher, they are not just burdened by everything that they have to do. They have the support to remain in the schools.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now Lex challenge. You want to come on up? Sure. 30 seconds to challenge somebody.
Okay.
Use my microphone.
Okay. So this is a challenge for Monica. You know, the voters have been feeling generous and they have funded several increases to set students up for success. One of the reasons why property tax reform wasn't on the ballot this time around is because maybe that goodwill is fading. And so if you are on the board and you have to make decisions to cut areas in order to raise support for teachers, what would you cut and why?
Well, compared, other people have brought this up before, compared to other districts, we have a lower percentage that goes towards our school sites. And so one thing we can do right away is to, move some of our dollars away from our administrative budget, central office, and go back towards our school sites so they can make a direct impact on our students and, have more funding for our teachers' salaries. So that is something that I would.
What part of the central office?
A lot of different levels. So yes, moving away from central office and putting more budgets, putting more dollars back on our school sites where it most matters for our children.
All right. You guys can head back to your chairs. Oh, yes, absolutely. Oh my, it's getting crowded. Come on up, have a chair. Oh, here, you want to do it?
So, on the issue of how you support our teachers, you pay them, but you level with them. And this is something that our board has done only half done. Yes, our voters have increased salaries, and that's good. But the district has, and the mayor's is now really at odds with the board on this, and the superintendent. The district has paid out the salaries before the money has come in. That's irresponsible. It's not leveling with the teachers. We have to live up to that commitment to the teachers. It's unfair to the teachers having been granted the raise that's now in limbo. So the school district put us in a tough position, but we have to live up to that for the teachers. Second is, I would support having each member of the Board of Supervisors, I would call on each one of them to look for, identify an underutilized piece of property that's city-owned, match it up with district-owned property so we can have teacher housing. It is unconscionable that 1/3 of our teachers live out of town, they have to commute up to 90 minutes a day, and then they stand in front of the classroom. We have to do better by our teachers.
Thank you. All right. Go on back to your chairs if that was the last challenge of the week. Woo! That was fun. I have some yes/no questions. Do you support the creation of teacher housing in any way funded by SFUSD? Funded by either through facility use or through the budget? Okay? And if yes, which was most of you, do you believe that this choice will impact teacher pay? So if you said yes, you would want to spend money from SFUSD towards this, and I'm counting facilities as a form of that. Do you believe it would impact teacher pay? So curious about it. Meaning you wouldn't be able to raise it as high. It wouldn't go down, but it may not go as high. Okay. That was a fall flat. Sorry, people. All right. I've got another yes/no. Just curious, are any of you aware of any issues with the substitute pool at the district? Okay. All right. Now I'd like to bring up Alita, Aunga, and Lex. All right. Each of you brought up the budget in different ways. So please take 2 minutes to explain what parts of the budget you would reprioritize and fund more fully, and where you would take the cuts from. So Lex, I liked where you were going with that. Have 2 minutes.
Well, the budget's just changed a lot, even in this week, as we've been reading in the news that the board voted to raise the salaries for educators and did not, and it looks like they probably won't be able to use the Prop G funding for that first initial thing. So already for the board who's coming on soon, they'll be looking at maybe even, $10 million decrease, maybe $20 million decrease in the rainy day fund. So what I would do find things where there's another clear resource for it. So teacher housing is affordable housing, and we need to hold the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development accountable for the number of teachers who are getting into those available spots. And community schools and after-school programs need to be funded through the Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families, and through public and private partnerships. There's other opportunities to look at surplus land and to really move that forward, and I have a track record to do that. So when I say we could find more money, I'm not talking about taxes, I'm talking about facilities stewardship and like good communication. Another thing I would do is absolutely build enrollment. The number of kindergartners enrolled last year decreased by 547, that's 11%, that is a crisis. That's a sign that students, like families, are not stepping up to our public schools, and we really need to improve communication, improve on-ramps to enrollment, language accessible, easy to access, in order, and that would immediately raise funds.
Thank you. Ellen?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, absolutely. So each of you brought up the budget in different ways, but I would like you to take 2 minutes to explain what parts of the budget you would reprioritize and fund more fully, and where you would take the cuts from.
So I mean, we keep going around the word cuts, right? Keep going around the word cuts for me, which is kind of like deficit thinking, right? So like, I don't know if folks know, but San Francisco Unified School District gets almost is part of the lowest allocation funding within the state and city. So we're at 45, I think 41 or 45% when it comes to state and city allocation funding, when the average is actually like at 65 to 68, right? And so there was a huge push by principals in this city, and it just happened by the last school year, from June Jordan, Boa, Mission High School, to really start to push the school district into these questions of like, why are we at 45%? How do we get to the 68%, right? And so when I'm talking to these supervisors, when I'm talking to the mayor, I had this conversation with the mayor, you know, I'm not only asking her for her support, but I'm asking, what are you going to do for our school district? How are we going to open up that big old budget you got, right? So I was with Mark Sanchez this week, and he said if the city just allocated $200 million from their budget and put it into the school district, that would raise our per pupil spending by $4,000, right? So the question is, why can't we get any of that funding, right? And the mayor is super open, the supervisors are also open, but it takes leadership that is going to be able to bridge the gap between these two and not create division so that we can make these things happen for the kids.
Right? Thank you. Alida.
All right. So for me, I think it's, again, following up on a lot of this, going outside of district funds. The way that the state has funded our school districts, LCFF went up this year to its fully funded cap. What's the cap right now? The way special education is funded, special education costs in the district have risen significantly. Yet funding has only gone up 9 or 10%. And the way that we fund mental health services, that bill changed 5 years ago. AB 114 is now, so what used to be covered by mental health, county mental health services is now fully covered by the district. And so we've taken on a whole lot of burden without any support from the state. So there have been a group of us who have actually done a whole lot of advocacy at the state level. And 2 years ago, the state budget included an extra $100 million for teachers, special education teacher training, recruitment, and retention. So I think we need to scream louder at our state legislators as a big part of it. But I think we need to do that to fund our interventions. Every child needs to understand how to read by 3rd grade. You know, that's one of the best indicators of success and being able to fully participate in our society. And unfortunately, right now, some of our most expensive kids to educate are falling through the cracks. So partnerships with San Francisco Public Library, like Tenderloin Community Center is doing. The library trained all of the teachers at Tenderloin Community Center on organ and reading methods. So again, thinking outside of school funds and developing partnerships. That was really okay. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, go back and get your panels. All right, this will seem like a random number, and it kind of is because I made it up. Have Have you attended more than 26 school board meetings?
Are you still in committee?
I am, ad hoc or standing. Awesome, thank you. Now this is going to be a popcorn, but to simplify, I'm going to pass my mic down in this direction. Please name and rank the top 3 in order that you want to be on them, standing in ad hoc committees that you have your eye on. Oops, sorry. Do you need a name? No? Okay.
Number 1 would be obviously curriculum and instruction, if y'all can do that at this point. 2 would be budget, finance. And 3rd would be the human resources,
Labor.
personnel, and labor.
All right.
Well, I have my own too. First was actually school assignment. You know, for many families, school assignment. Second would be budget. And third, I'm still keeping my eye open. But that'll be it. Those 2 for sure.
I would say probably budget first. Second, student assignment, we gotta fix that least. And then probably 3rd, curriculum and instruction. We're gonna have to draw straws for all of these. That's precisely. I was gonna say budget, assignment, and curriculum. Facility.
Yeah! It's like somebody's got to say it.
Also budget, and I actually haven't seen this ad hoc committee, but I want to start or be on transportation.
Ad hoc committee on student assignment, budget, and policy, rules, and legislation.
Facility, budgets, and curriculum.
Curriculum, facilities, and budget.
Rules, curriculum is curriculum and programs, by the way, just to be a total nerd. And maybe budget. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me what committees I'm on, because I think that a lot of the work that has to be done happens collaboratively outside of the committee meetings. Frankly, I have some of my best conversations after the board meeting ends, as we go into closed session, and all of a sudden all the district leaders are stepping outside of the room and everyone waits in the lobby of 555 Franklin there. You've got a really captive audience, so that's a good time to get stuff done.
I love it. Pass it on back. Alrighty. This is another yes/no, so get your paddles ready. Thank you. Should the school board be a full-time paid position? Yes or no? The thinkers, we have some thinkers. You actually already did this. Yeah, okay, and did everybody raise your hands one more time so I can see?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we're nearing the end. One more yes or no. No, I lied. There's going to be another one. Here we go. If elected, do you pledge not to run for another elected office while seated on the Board of Education? Will you, oh yeah, double negative, sorry. Yeah, will you not run for another higher office while on the Board of Ed? Not. Okay. So far, nobody's running for another office but John. No, he's not going to run for office. Okay. Sorry, did I need to repeat the question? We had, for those of you who don't know, and Shimon is here. There you go. I got to do this, I think, 4 years ago. We have a stepping stone from the Board of Education to the Board of Supervisors. And I'm curious about your long-term plans. Does that make more sense, John? Whether you would run for another office? Can you hold up your panels one more time? Nobody's running for office. I'll believe it when I see it. Okay. All right, this is my last deep dive question. I would love Allison Collins, Lex, Michelle, come join me. Okay. I'm not going to have much time for the audience questions, so we're going to try to keep it tight if we can. So SFUSD struggles in both expressing expressive and receptive communication with families. In 2 minutes or less, please share what specific plans you would enact to improve communication with families at both the district and a school site level.
All right, I have a lot to say about this, so I'll go quickly. I worked at a school site, I've been a parent organizer, and then I've also worked at central office, and so I've seen the whole cycle. And so when I worked in the assessment office, we would design like assessments, we would test students, and then my kids would get tested, and then they'd come home and say, Mama, we got tested. And then I would ask, why didn't I hear about this, right? If I'm a parent, I knew about this in central office, but if I'm a regular parent, maybe I didn't know. And so I started bringing back information. I was working part-time at the school and part-time at the district, and I started bringing back information. And it was really interesting to see what information actually flowed out to me as a parent and what didn't. And I think what happens a lot is central office doesn't feel like it's their responsibility to communicate with families. They say, oh, the schools are responsible for that. But then we go out to schools and we show them a new assessment, and they say, all these parents are asking me questions, I'm doing something new for the first time, I don't know how to explain this, I'm just learning this. And I realized central office has a responsibility when we're doing centralized things to create communication tools to then share with families. And so I would 100%, it supports teachers, right? So I would 100% go to every single department and ask them, what is something that you are currently doing that impacts students? Because we need to communicate with them as well, and families. And then I would ask them what they're going to do and when they're going to do it, and I'd be following up with them as well. And then additionally, right now I'm going to apply to high school. There's all these transitions. I was talking with Lee about the fact that we're both transitioning. She's going from elementary to middle to high. And there is no communication we're getting at all. The only communication I'm getting is from my 8th graders. I have 2 who are saying, Mama, we have to go on tours. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm thinking, okay, should I be stressing out? Should I not be stressing out? And why am I learning about all this from 2 13-year-olds? I would like to learn this from an adult. And when I went to EPC and asked questions, they basically said, you can go to the fair. And I think that's not acceptable. I think that parents shouldn't have to do all the research, especially parents that work full-time or speak another language. I mean, any parent it does a disservice to. I think that's, when it comes to transitions, our district should do much more to push out information.
Take it away.
Sure. So I agree with Allison that we need to prioritize the areas where central office is putting a burden on families, and that it's exacerbating the achievement gap, especially for Black and Latinx students. And one example of that is health. So my son got pink eye last week, and I was immediately able to download an online form, quick send it to my doctor, and despite the 24-hour contagious illness thing, he was in school the next day. But I saw a dad at a Board of Education meeting whose daughter had been out of school for 13 days because he could not get the right information he needed from his office and then coordinate with his doctor. And that has to change. It shouldn't matter what school you go to. That shouldn't influence how long your students are out of school. Another thing is the sort of on-ramps at the kindergarten, middle school, and high school point, like Allison said, making that as easy as possible. And I'm in favor of using video because, for every dollar you spend to make that process easier for people to step up to public schools, you get a lot of money back for students. And then the other thing, there was at least one other that was really hard. Well, I would say culturally respectful schools. When you step up to a school and you're stepping into a school, if the school is named after someone who owns slaves, I think it's incredibly important that that doesn't happen because it tells you right away you're not valued to that extent. But as we roll that out, and it was introduced by Commissioners Cook and Sanchez, I believe, that's going to take a ton of implementation because there are websites, there are communication. When we started our kindergarten orientation a couple of weeks ago, I took about an hour and a half just signing on to all the different portals they tell you, and they give you codes and passwords too. So I would really focus on onboarding of families so they can be engaged. Thank you.
So when I served on the district PTA board for about 6 years, I heard from lots of families all over the city, and the constant message from them was we wish the district would partner better with us and communicate better with us. And this is actually the same message I've heard from teachers over the last several years as well. And they would say things like, this is so complicated, what if I was an English learner and I didn't? It was so difficult for them to navigate. And the general criticism was the district is reactive versus proactive. They didn't want to share information until it was fixed and done. before they brought in families. And so we have to change that. So a couple of things. Our superintendent has a cabinet of his senior leaders, and there's nobody currently sitting in that cabinet who comes in with a parent perspective. They have a wonderful person, Kevin Truitt, who leads student support services, but he has a ton of stuff to do. And so there's nobody sitting in and thinking about what's happening in the district, what needs to be communicated with family, and how with that lens. So we need to change that. We also, when we're looking at any initiative that staff bring forward to us as a board, I'm going to be the person sitting up there saying, when are we talking to families, and have we talked to them yet, and how are we using their voice, how are we getting their feedback? So that is going to become just the constant drumbeat, so that they are always bringing forward a family communication plan with anything they bring to us. The other thing is that we need to put more dollars into our interpretation and translation services. We have families speaking lots and lots of different languages in the city, and we need to identify funding that will help us communicate with them, especially in parent-teacher conferences. Because if we expect parents to be able to support their kids, they have to be able to communicate with their teachers. And we need to be able to, as some of my colleagues up here have talked about, being able to communicate how to draw effectively. I'm just going to go ahead and end. I can go on.
Thank you so much. All right, Sarah, if you can give me one or two questions. I have one last paddle move, so go ahead and take your seats. This is my sense of humor coming out. Sorry. Have you ever been to the EPC? And if you have to ask, your answer is no. Okay, thank you. It's just a special journey you should put on your calendar if you have not yet been there. All right. We need bold ideas. Sorry, this comes from one of you. Thank you. We need bold ideas to desegregate our schools. What will you do to significantly decrease black-white segregation in San Francisco public schools? Jump up. We're on a time crunch. Let's talk fast. She's got 1 minute. Yeah, no, 30 seconds just in case.
First, many of our families aren't even able to fully participate in our school assignment system. I've talked to so many families who can't take off 40 hours of their time from a job to visit school sites. So first, what we need to do is make the application process online so families can apply online for the schools. Second, we need to make tours of our schools available during the evenings and weekends so that working families can have access to this. And third, especially for Latinos, introducing a promotora model, which is community advocates who go to schools, go to churches, go to laundromats to just talk about how to enroll and give them the tools they need so they can have access.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this one?
So my son came in when we had the last new assignment system. We need to tweak that again so that we are really, truly doing the job of integration. And let's look at Berkeley Unified's model. Can we actually also add something like income as something to provide families with priorities? How about also making our enrollment fairs places where we celebrate cultures, so that we're not segregated in terms of who we hang out with and what we feel comfortable.
Actually, pass it down. Just keep it tight.
School segregation is a symptom of a larger problem of systemic racism in our nation. When I was Secretary for Fair Housing, we were the first administration in the Obama administration focused on affirmatively furthering fair housing. That means it is a city role and it is a cooperative relationship with the city, the school district, the private sector, to make sure that we are addressing the criminal justice issues, we're addressing so many inequity issues. That's the way that the school segregation issue then becomes a symptom and part of the solution.
Pass it on. Thank you.
Hi, I want to piggyback on what Lee said, and I do think we need some enrollment. We need to change how we do enrollment, but I also know whatever we create, parents will work around that system, and a lot of times we resegregate, and we see that all over the country. And so we also, as families, need to have conversations about race and what we think is a good school and a bad school. I started San Francisco Families Union to have those conversations with families. My school is an awesome school, nobody's ever heard of it. Some families think it's a bad school, and in a lot of just because of test scores. And we need to stop using test scores to rate schools. That is not okay. So that's something
We got another question from the audience. This is, what do you view is the solution to the massive teacher shortage, particularly in special ed and bilingual education? What does the city and/or district need to do to keep our classrooms staffed with highly qualified educators. You can go here, close enough.
Before I start, can I just say you are a fantastic moderator?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We have some great programs in existence. I think it's very important to acknowledge the good work that SFUSD is doing when it's doing good work. There's a huge amount we need to do to fix, but this is an area where they're trying really hard. They're trying to bring teachers in that reflect the demographics of the school. We've got pathway to teaching programs, we've got teacher residency programs, we've got programs out the wazoo. The problem is providing the support to those teachers while they're in them, because again, high burnout, you can come in with best intentions, but if you're not supported, you leave out of frustration.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to make Lex?
So I was walking in my neighborhood and I met an elementary school principal the other day, and I asked him this question about, how might we retain teachers? He had to hire 7 teachers this year, and he was feeling pretty fried, and we're only a month in the school. And he said, yes, absolutely, wages are important. But the other things that are frustrating are, just not being able to get a light bulb fixed, or San Francisco decides to be really cutting edge in terms of its curriculum and dictates that to the teachers, but then doesn't support them in designing that curriculum. So I think those are a few things that we could do, but I am encouraged by programs like Baby Ignite, which was a teacher in, stop, okay, fine.
So what does San Francisco loan forgiveness program look for teachers? What does free transportation look like for our educators? So I was talking to Nick, he's on the board at Bart, and he was like, well, the Bart has nothing to do with education. I was like, Nick, I'm challenging you on that. Okay, 2/3 of these teachers don't live in the city. And so how do we get teachers to put their kids in the schools that they need to put them into without having to go through all these nuances, right? So for me, it's like, how do we think about the well-being and the holistic approach to the teacher versus what's happening today?
Thank you.
Okay, so very quickly, we know there's lots of research that talks about this, we heard about it a little bit tonight, but having a master teacher when you're a brand new teacher is really critical. Having that support for those first few years that you're in the classroom, so that's a really worthy investment for us to be allocating our resources to. And then we also know that research tells us that the #1 reason actually that people leave the classroom is due to lack of support at their school site, right kind of professional development. It actually, salary isn't the #1 thing, although I think it's more problematic. But that is something that we have to do better. And the other thing we have to get creative with our recruitment. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Pick up for recruitment. We need to do better in the whole experience when a teacher comes into our schools, what that looks like and how they do that. That includes offering to pay for the credentialing program. It includes offering to pay for partnerships with universities so they can get their masters in that way. There are programs that exist already, and we need to continue to grow them, dedicate additional funds for them, and find master teachers across our district who are willing to support our teachers in that way. We also need to make sure we build robust pipelines with regional universities and colleges to make sure that robust pathways are existing for people who want to go into that.
Awesome. Thank you. Oh, I'm going to cut it off because I'm going to ask one more question. Sorry, lady. All right. I am the parent, except I'm not. I'm ready for someone else. I am the parent of a 5th grader who is gifted in math and attends an SFUSD school. As I begin the middle school search, what would you tell me about my child's chances of differentiated math and 8th grade algebra in an SFUSD middle school?
Can we get a yes or no question on that one? Yes.
Ooh. All right. Let me. Do you support 8th grade algebra? A return to 8th grade algebra? Yes or no? And I think we've got somebody to explain. I'm going to just pick you for this to explain why. Okay. And then I'm going to take a notebook.
All right, really quickly, we can't go back to old 8th grade algebra because that would be going back to the standards, the old standard, right? What we have is new Common Core standards which require new things. And really quickly, I've come up with a new way of explaining it. You could bake a cake with the basic ingredients, but if you wanted to bake cookies, you're using the same components, but you're doing them in a different proportion in a different way. So now we have algebra taught from 6th through 9th grade, and it's spread out, and it's integrated in a different way, and we also have higher cognitive challenges. We're doing more critical thinking. It's a different model, so we can't replace.
We're making cookies. Okay. And you want a challenge? Oh, wait, you guys hear from somebody who said no. Or you, John, you would like to bring back algebra. Do you want to bring back algebra?
I said yes.
You did that? Oh, all right, Bill.
Well,
Sorry, John.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Here. 30.
The way we close the achievement gap is not to put an artificial ceiling on certain courses. If students are able to do 8th grade algebra, then they should be able to get it. And it's a mistake to take that away. There is already a gap of people kids who are not getting into calculus, not getting into the higher level. It's the wrong message for employers. It's the wrong message for college admissions officers that we are a district that is not offering 8th grade algebra. I would bring it back.
Oh, that wasn't the challenge. 30 seconds.
Well, I will say this. There is great frustration around the inflexibility of students to be able to access courses, generally from 8th grade all the way through calculus, right? So that is a known issue among our district. What we need to work on is making sure that we understand what students need and matching our course schedules and our course workloads so that we can best meet the needs of students across the board, right? So if a student is already mastering 8th grade Common Core Math, which I support a Common Core Math generally, like if our students are mastering those concepts, we should have the availability to give them access to 8th grade algebra.
Since they had two people talking, we had two people
Grab the mic. You're going to have to do very fast closing statements.
Okay, all right. So first of all, the redesigned algebraic concepts do come in 8th grade. They do come in 6th grade. They do come in 7th grade. And I've got anecdotal friends who tell me that their kids left 8th grade. I know one family who's now at a private school, and their kid tested out of algebra after being in SFUSD through 8th grade. Our teachers designed this curriculum. I mean, we're on the right track here, guys. You know,
So some reassurance for the 5th grade parents. All right. Thank you all so much. I want each candidate to be able to spend 1 more minute summarizing anything they have to say. So, Alita, do you want to just grab that mic and lead us off? And minute or less.
All right. So what I didn't talk about in my opening is I'm a former foster parent, and I've adopted my kids out of foster care. All my students are African Americans, so there's nothing more important to me than closing that opportunity gap. And being a mother, a white mother in particular, I mean, my kids are growing up a heck of a lot differently than I did, and we need to do more to support them, and I'm happy to help do it. I was a mechanical engineer before becoming a special education advocate, so I think policy, I think procedures, I think systems. As Paul Backelman said, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. So we've got to think about changing the procedures, changing the policies, changing the systems. As we've talked about, historic racism is a thing, and it's systemic. So what can we do as a school district to fix that? That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I just want to say that I have gifted kids. I want to just finish up. I was a gifted kid. It's not about sorting and labeling. It's about how you teach. I think that was talked about. My kids are in 8th grade math, and they're having a great experience. They have some really great teachers. I'm hearing from other kids at the same school. They're maybe not having such a great experience. So it's really, really about supporting staff. And I can do that because I've got experience as an educator. I know how to understand systems, and I've been able to impact change. At my school last year, my kids didn't want to go to school, and it was 2 years ago. I worked with families. We had a principal issue. We got a new principal, and it's been night and day. I worked with Harvard to get over $1 million to help redesign their school because it was a structural problem. I worked with families in the Tenderloin and Reading to make sure that they could work together to get money from Facebook and Twitter and other organizations to help supplement the fundraising that they couldn't do. So there's a lot of people here who care about kids. I'm somebody who's actually got a track record in getting things done. I'm happy to talk to you and share more information, and please support me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
So most of you are parents in here, right? And understand what it feels like to have to go through this process and know that this is, you only got one chance with our kids, right? I'm a parent too. Right, I was at an elementary school 2 years ago. There was a shooting in 2 weeks of the school, there was a shooting. There was a stabbing of a 5th grader on the bus, and there was an attempted kidnap on one of the 5th graders. That's happened in 2 weeks. I'm a therapist, and I've been seeing this mental health thing spread through our district like crazy. There was a gun that went off at Balboa High School. Now you tell me that school's not going to be traumatized the whole entire year. I was at June Jordan when the shooting went down. I helped triage that whole entire thing with the Wellness Center. We have a mental health issue in this city that doesn't discriminate against race, age, or gender. I will be the first school social worker on this board to really start to address these issues from a very, very early age. That's why my campaign is super, super strong right now. And I would love to lead today too with your support. Thank you.
I'm a working mic.
Thank you all very, very much for being here for this entire time. When 44% of families with kids under age 6 are thinking of leaving the city, in part because of housing costs, but it also means our school system is broken. And we have to do a much, much better job. We're not doing it today. We have decisions that are made without parent consultation. We have decisions that are made without a broad view. A lot of the candidates, a lot of the current members are off running for other offices. I have the educational experience in public service, in civil rights, in education. Educators who've known me for 20 or 30 years, like Ron Cabral, the former principal at Potrero Hill. Elected officials like Leader Nancy Pelosi, who's known me 30 years, has endorsed me alone. We have to work together. We have to work together for a better school system, not only for those who have children in the schools, but for every San Franciscan and for our future. Thank you all for being here.
So what I learned my first time on the campaign trail is I thought endorsements would be like 80% skills and experience and maybe 20% who you knew. And it's a lot more the reverse. It's who's knocked on doors and who you know. You heard me talk a little bit today about my passions, about the way that I see communications, facilities, and transportation having to do with attendance and achievement and resources for all students. Our enrollment is dropping a lot, and if we can build enrollment, not only are we building stronger schools, but we're building a more unified city by building community in our public schools. It's something I'm really passionate about. So if I'm elected, I'll be focusing on central office accountability, communication, facilities, and transportation, and then supporting all these great education experts in implementation. Thank you.
So I am an advocate for the public schools. I am a fierce advocate because when they tried to shut down City College of San Francisco, serving 70,000 students, including many of our parents from SFUSD, I was on the front lines doing the media communications, doing advocacy at the state and the local levels. So I will put that energy into our public schools as school board commissioner. And secondly, I will be an ally and an ambassador to all our communities. I've worked in the Bayview, I've worked in the Mission, I've worked in the Haight, I've worked in the English Side Excelsior, I've worked in the West Side. And so in those capacities, I am somebody who will listen to all our communities with different needs, but also see the commonalities, because ultimately, we must not divide. You know, we are stronger united, and that is what makes San Francisco as wonderful as it is today. Let's bring our communities together.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Parker.
I have a lot of experience and importantly a passion for doing this work. I've been a leader. I have in our schools, I have the governance experience, I have the policy understanding, the finance understanding to do a good job on this board, and I can start ready to go day one, and our kids really don't have time to waste. We got to get to work. I have been effective in bringing forth an after school for all policy. I worked with the city and the school district to get that passed. I reduced class sizes in 8th grade math, getting math coaches in our middle schools. And I have worked, and I know all the players. I know the people in the district, I know the people in the school site, I know the people in the communities to make sure we can all work together to support our kids. And importantly, for you as constituents, I am accessible, I am approachable, I am responsive, I am inclusive in my leadership, and you can count on me to include you in decision making and to make sure that I'm out at your schools to hear what you have to say when we are making decisions at this district level. Thank you, and I hope that you will consider supporting me.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm of the mentality that no one is going to save us but us. And especially in this national narrative where many of our families, especially our communities of color, are feeling attacked, what are we in San Francisco doing different to make sure that every child feels supported and valued within our public schools? I'm three things. I'm an activator, I'm a community builder, and I get things done. And I've done this for years. I've done this with our leading statewide coalitions, working on early care education, whether leading the SO tax, which now brings in $15 million a year into our city's coffers, whether it's leading Latino Parent Equity Coalition, which brings in millions of dollars to fund family resource centers, education initiatives, and get our Latino community into below market rate housing. But more importantly, I know that it's through community, and I've talked to so many families throughout this past year. It will continue to be accessible in bringing families into the table to provide ideas and to be part of the solution. Because again, no one is going to save us but us. And how do we make sure, as a community, we are elevating our schools as a top priority in our city, and as much as we're talking about innovation or technology, we're talking about our schools so that we can invest in our next generation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us here today. I firmly believe that the leadership of any organization should reflect the people that they're serving, both as parents, as educators, as a gay educator of color. You know, we have phenomenal people who are running for school board. And we really need someone on our board who has done the work of systems level change in supporting our curriculum and instruction and teachers in the classroom. And we need someone who knows what that looks like, what the rigor bar looks like, and how we can have a conversation with our schools and our district staff in making change, transformative change, around what good teaching means in our district, across our district. And I've done that work both with the California Department of Ed when NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards, first came out. I've done that work with UC Berkeley in crafting Amplify Science, which is the curriculum that we use for science in elementary schools here. And I've done that work in a national work process with a collaborative on building out personalized learning platforms right for schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please come see Jody for a ballot. Thank you all so much. There are the candidates answered questionnaires. There should be some more copies on your way out. If you want the electronic copy, have Becky take down your email.